I fear not the dark itself, but what may lurk within it. Welcome to Lurk, bringing you creepy, strange, and bone-chilling stories, with your host, Jamie Jackson.
Hey Lurkers, welcome to episode 47. I wanted to take a moment and just say my voice might sound slightly funky in this episode because I am dealing with a cold. It's just a regular cold. My grandson had croup and he shared. Hopefully I'm going to get through this without hacking up my lung. So I apologize for the gravelly, weird, funky voice. It sounds really weird recording it. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about a couple of Maryland monsters, both of which seem to be of the canine variety. We've covered a couple of the Maryland monsters already, namely the Snallygaster in episode 27 and the Sykesville monster in episode 39. And I've also mentioned numerous times how crazy it is that Maryland has so many strange creatures for being such a small state. In fact, during my research for this episode, I came across this quote in an article that read, "Maryland might have the highest number of authenticated monsters of any state on the East Coast." I plan on covering them all over time. Some of them I had never even heard of until I actually came across this article. The list that I have accumulated thus far for Maryland monsters includes the Great Cypress Swamp Monster, the Creature of the Burnt Swamp, Chessie the Chesapeake Bay Monster, Goatman, the Sykesville Monster, Catwoman, Pigwoman, the Wampus Cat, the Snarly Yow, the Delmarva Devil, Cowwoman, Mountain Elves, the Coyote, Bigfoot, Hatchet Harry, Snallygaster, the Eelpoot, and the Dwayyo. And in this episode, we're going to be covering the Dwayyo and the Snarly Yow. Dwayyo, Dwayyo. Daylight come and me won't go home. Me say Dwayyo. Sorry. I really can't help myself. I can. If you knew how many times I really just wanted to break out into song, you would be very proud of me for not doing so, and probably extremely thankful. So, as far as the Dwayyo goes, some people have claimed that the Dwayyo is a baby Snallygaster. That is not something that I buy into. Not that I take it as a serious thought, but to put some serious thought into it, the Snallygaster and the Dwayyo are completely different types of creatures, and I don't buy for a second that they could be related. Others say that the Dwayyo is the mortal enemy of the Snallygaster. Is it just me, or does that kind of sound like the descriptions on the Chinese zodiac, placemats in the Chinese buffet restaurants? Rabbits should marry horses, but never marry a pig, and stay away from the cock. It's a rooster. It's not a bad word. It could be. The Dwayyo is a creature that has features similar to a wolf. It has fur covering its entire body. It has a long bushy tail, a dog-like nose, and it stands like a human, so it's bipedal. Most descriptions say the creature is around 6 feet tall. In 1944, the creature was sighted in the area of Middletown, Maryland, where witnesses heard frightful screams and found odd footprints. You might remember that Middletown was also an area plagued by the Snallygaster. I guess it's no wonder that people were trying to draw some kind of correlation between the two creatures, whether it was baby mama Snallygaster with her little baby Dwayyo, or that they hated each other. Either way, because they're both appearing in the same area, they were trying to force some kind of relationship between the two. I don't think they're related at all. They're totally not even alike. So we're going to fast forward to 1965. So there were some sightings in 1944. There wasn't a whole lot of mention specifically other than the screaming and weird footprints. So fast forward to 1965, when the Dwayyo sightings really heat up in the area of Gambrel State Park. Now, Gambrel State Park is located on the ridge of the Catoctin Mountains in Frederick, Maryland. It totals 1,200 acres, located 51 miles northwest of Washington, D.C., and 53 miles west of Baltimore. Most of the park's roads, buildings, overlooks, ranger stations, etc., were built in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps. On November 27, 1965, the Frederick Post ran this story. Near the woods of Gambrel State Park, John Becker went out to his yard to investigate a strange noise. It was getting dark, and he had started back to his house when he saw something moving toward him. It was as big as a bear, had long black hair, a bushy tail, and growled like a wolf or a dog in anger. As it got closer, it stood up on its hind legs and attacked him. Becker fought the creature until it ran into the woods, leaving him, his wife, and children in horror. Deciding to remain anonymous under the alias John Becker, he files a report with the local state police, telling them of an attack by a mysterious monster that he called a Dwayyo. Other reports started coming in after this article appeared in the newspaper. There was supposed to be a Dwayyo hunt in December of 1965, organized by students at the local community college, but it fizzled out because no one showed up. Actually, there was mention that there was one pickup truck with a bunch of students in the back bed of it, carrying on and everything, driving around town. That is apparently, possibly, the hunting party. But I don't think they ever actually did any hunting, unless it was for beer. In the summer of 1966, Jim A. encountered the creature on the outskirts of Gambrel State Park on his way to a campsite. He described it as a shaggy, two-legged animal the size of a deer, with a triangular-shaped head with pointed ears and chin and dark brown fur. It made a horrid scream and backed away. It had an odd walk. Its legs stuck out from the side of the trunk of the body, making its movements appear almost spider-like as it backed away. That's a hard no. I can't stand anything that moves spider-like or like the crab walk. In movies, that freaks me out. I cannot stand that. In the fall of 1976, there was a sighting near Thurmont, Maryland. Two men turned off of Route 77 onto a private road and saw a large creature run across the road in front of their car. This is the description that they gave of the creature that they saw. It was at least 6 feet tall, but inclined forward since it was moving quickly. Its head was fairly large and similar to the profile of a wolf. The body was covered in brown or brindle-colored fur, but the lower half had a striped pattern of noticeably darker and lighter banding. The forelegs were slimmer and held out in front as it moved. The back legs were very muscled and thick, similar perhaps to a kangaroo. This was not a hominid-type creature. It did not have the characteristics of an ape. It was much more similar to a wolf or a ferocious dog. However, it was definitely moving upright and appeared to be adapted for that type of mobility. I was particularly impressed by the size and strength of the back legs, the stripes on the lower half of the body, and the canine or wolf-like head. There are several large dog breeds that come in brindle, Great Danes being one of them, but the shape of a Great Dane's head doesn't really match the description of triangular and pointy. With the distinct striping, I immediately thought hyena, though I don't think they typically run around on 2 legs, or live in the Maryland woods. Though the coyote that I mentioned in my list of Maryland monsters, the coyote was thought to be a cross between a hyena and a coyote, hence the name coyote, but Basically, what the animal is, in my opinion, is a fox with mange. We're not going to actually cover that as an actual monster because I don't think it is one. But, maybe it was a coyote, I don't know. In 1978, there were 2 park rangers who encountered a large hairy creature on 2 legs in the Cunningham Falls area of Catoctin State Park. 3 Myersville children compared the beast's likeness to that of an Irish wolfhound, and wolfhounds do come in brindle, and they're quite large. They're also very bushy, have a long bushy tail, have more of a pointed or triangular shaped head, but there's no reason why a dog would run around on 2 legs. Unless there was a problem with its front legs. But that really isn't part of the description. Also, how likely would a very large dog with front leg deformities that force it to become bipedal, how would that be able to survive on its own for years in the woods? So I really don't think an actual dog could be responsible for these sightings. I actually wanted to ask our vet. I wanted to pick her brain about this. She is a member of choir at church with my daughter and husband, and I was going to hit her up this past weekend, and my daughter was like, yeah, don't do that. So if you're a vet and you're listening and you want to weigh in, please do send me an email. But it's my personal belief, on the little bit of knowledge I have, there are dogs that walk on 2 legs. It's because their front legs are deformed. They were born with deformities. So to adapt, they learn to walk on their hind legs. But this creature is seen with its front legs. And while its front legs are slimmer and not as muscled, they're not deformed in any way. That's never part of the description. Other descriptions of the creature say that it stood upright and cried like a baby and screamed like a woman. It was roaming the Maryland countryside, leaving huge footprints and anxiety. One woman said her daughter was being treated for a nervous condition because of the Dwayyo, and voiced her desire to see an end to the story and the creature. Several hunters saw a strange black beast roaming the woods, and another person reportedly saw a dog-shaped animal the size of a calf chasing some cows on a farm near her home. A young woman had a run-in with the beast while she was out driving in her car. She began to feel as though she were being watched, and when she turned to look, she saw something running through the trees. The creature was able to keep pace with her vehicle. She slowed down to get a better look at what the animal was, and a dog-like creature on 2 legs came out of the tree line. She said it had huge fangs and lunged at the car as she hit the gas and sped away. So what in the world is this thing? What is the Dwayyo? Certainly the description of the creature could match an actual dog, like the Irish wolfhound, and those 3 kids did say that's what it looked like. But an actual dog is not going to choose to walk around on 2 legs, so I don't really think that's a possibility. Some say the Dwayyo could be a werewolf. A werewolf, for those not familiar, is a human with the ability to shapeshift into the form of a wolf, either purposefully or after being placed under a curse. The transformation typically occurs during a full moon. While the description does seem to fit with a description of a werewolf, there is no mention of the moon phases, and the lack of that information makes me think it didn't really play into the myth and isn't an important part of the story, and that would make me think not a werewolf. The other possible explanation is something called a Hexenwolf. Hexenwolves, or Hexenwolfen, originate in German mythology. It is a person who transforms into a wolf-like beast through the use of a magical talisman that is provided to them by another being. It's important to note that the Hexenwolfen do not transform through their own magic, but by the magic of someone else who has provided them with the talisman. The talisman, usually a belt made from a wolf's hide, though it is also sometimes a ring or an amulet, is worn, and the magic is activated by certain magical words. This magic talisman is usually acquired by making a deal with a powerful sorcerer, demon, or devil, and receiving the talisman in return. Really, making deals like this is never a good idea. I have yet to hear of one of these deals being good in the end. When the talisman is worn and the incantation spoken, the person physically transforms into a huge wolf-like beast. The talisman provides an anchor to protect the human spirit and helps control the physical wolf body. The person's human intelligence and reason are intact, but the person loses their human inhibitions. The Hexenwolf is prone to act on conscious or unconscious desires, without doubt. Though the Hexenwolf's personality is initially protected, it continually erodes over time, the more the person transforms, and the talisman's power is addictive. Disney's The Shaggy Dog is a benign example of a Hexenwolf. Or, if you're a Scooby-Doo fan, the episode Make a Beeline Away from That Feline is also similar, where the medallion turns the woman into a cat creature who robs people. I think it's season 3. Yeah, I'm seriously a nerd. I am such a nerd. I am almost embarrassingly nerdy. It's interesting that the Dwayyo is a possible mythological German creature, because the area was predominantly settled by people of German heritage, and the Snallygaster, which we discussed in episode 27, was also German in origin. Makes you wonder what the heck those Germans brought with them. And that's said with complete love because I'm descended from those Germans, and honestly, I think it's pretty freaking cool mythology. Personally, I can turn into a Hexenwolf without any inhibitions when I drink alcohol, but I don't really drink that much. There's also another possibility with the Dwayyo and what it could be, and that is a dogman. Now, I don't really hold a whole lot of store in the whole dogman concept. Dogman was a species of large, humanoid canine hybrid that was capable of walking on 4 legs or 2 legs. Just like the Dwayyo can do either one. It's often reported to be aggressive and scary, but doesn't really injure humans at all. But this is where I have a little bit of issue. The whole dogman thing wasn't even introduced until 1987 in a song called The Legend by Steve Cook, a Michigan radio producer. There were no reports of dogman creatures prior to the existence of this song. So, before the song was released in 1987, there's no history of the dogman. Afterwards, all kinds of reports started coming in. I hear a lot about dogman, but dogman in this exact sense, I don't really hold a whole lot of store in that creature. We'll look at the dogman in the future. I really think that is a made-up myth, but the question is, are people seeing a dogman creature, or are they seeing a creature like whatever the Dwayyo is? Because the Dwayyo happened before there was ever this song in 1987. The Dwayyo started, I think, like in the 40s, like I mentioned, 1944. Perhaps they're seeing Hexenwolfen. I really like saying the word Hexenwolfen. I did say there were 2 creatures that I was going to discuss in this episode. One of them is not the cat that is screaming outside the door for me to give him canned food. It's time now for me to tell you about a somewhat, though not entirely, similar creature that gained notoriety when it was mentioned in the late 1800s in Madeline Dahlgren's book, South Mountain Magic. Ms. Dahlgren referred to it as the dog fiend roaming South Mountain, black, bigger than any other animal, with a wide red mouth. I'm talking about the Snarly Yow. Sightings of the Snarly Yow date all the way back to the 1790s. A local huntsman who was well known around the area as being a sure shot encountered the creature while out hunting. Afraid, but confident in his ability, he took aim and shot at the creature, but the bullet passed through with no effect. He reloaded and fired again and again, but each time the bullets passed right through without effect. The huntsman was overcome with dread and out of ammunition, and took off running out of the woods. There are numerous stories of the Snarly Yow, and several were mentioned in the book written by Madeline Dahlgren. One came from a man known to be a decent man who lived in the area. Dahlgren writes, "He is a good type of a sturdy mountain man. A sober, laborious, strong, and trustworthy young man of perhaps 30 years of age. He is married and lives with his little family in the first cabin on the brow of the hill that overlooks Glendale. His hut is not over a quarter of a mile from the alleged habitat of the black dog. One night, about 10 o'clock, as he was returning from the village of Boonesboro, whither he had gone to make some little purchases for his family, he encountered the black dog. It was clear starlight, and the ungainly form of the beast could be distinctly traced. It was black and bigger than any dog he had ever seen, and as he came nearer, the object intercepted him, and stood guarding the road in such a way as to forbid his crossing. So to use his own expression, he fit him. That is, nothing daunted, he fought at him. But to his confusion, as the creature was attacked, it grew larger, and presently seemed to extend across the road, making no noise, but showing a very wide and very ugly-looking red mouth. While all the time the thick and heavy blows rained down upon it, the sinewy arm of the woodsman met with no resistance, but rather seemed to beat the air. The creature ended up vanishing, and the man returned home. He had no wounds or marks on his body at all." Madeline Dahlgren had several different eyewitness accounts of this strange black dog. There was a farmer who saw the black dog and became instantly paralyzed with fear. Another saw it coming out of a tumble-down old stable. Someone else claimed he saw the creature change from coal-black to white. One witness that I find interesting was an itinerant preacher, which is a preacher who travels to different churches. He saw the Snarly Yow 3 separate times after holding evening prayer meetings. He saw it when he was returning home. A mountain man called Big Joe was riding along the road one evening when the black dog suddenly jumped up from the road and ran up in front of his horse. Big Joe said he noticed that the creature kicked up dust and dirt when it ran, and it had long claws. He chased the creature on horseback, but was unable to overtake it, and it disappeared. In case you're interested, horses travel at a speed of around 30 miles per hour, on average, galloping. Racehorses, of course, are clocked at 45 to 55 miles per hour. And most dogs average 15 to 20 miles per hour. Greyhounds, of course, are faster. So that's one fast dog. There was also a story of a husband and wife who were traveling by horse-drawn sleigh. The wife noticed the black dog standing off to the side of the road. As they approached the area where the dog was, the horse started to spook, and it took the husband's full attention to keep the animal moving and under control. The wife didn't mention seeing the dog to her husband, knowing he would want to stop to try to attack the creature. Legend says that the Snarly Yow is more often seen by animals than by humans. Many times it would appear to horses as it stood blocking the road. The horse would refuse to continue down the road. In that instance, you should never try to force the animal past the creature. One man tried to force his horse past the Snarly Yow and ended up being thrown and breaking his collarbone. The Snarly Yow wasn't seen for many years, and then in 1976, a couple hit a huge black dog with glowing eyes. When they stopped to check on the animal, the creature was gone. Other drivers have said it appeared in the road. They thought they hit it, but when they stopped, it was as if they had driven through the beast, since it was still standing in the same spot but behind the car. The descriptions of the Snarly Yow are basically all the same. It's a large black dog, larger than any other dog known, with a wide red mouth, glowing eyes, and large paws. It chases cars, appears and disappears magically, and can even change size. There is a similar spectral dog in England by the name of Black Shuck that has a similar appearance to the Snarly Yow. Black Shuck, or Old Shuck, or Old Shock, or just Shuck, is a large black dog who roams the coastline of England. Some descriptions say it only has one eye. And I don't mean that it's got one eye. I mean that it's a cyclops dog. It's got one giant eye in its forehead. Not that it's missing an eye. Descriptions of black shuck vary in both shape and size, from that of a large dog to being the size of a calf or a horse. W.A. Dutt, in his 1901 Highways and Byways in East Anglia, describes the creature thus. He takes the form of a huge black dog and prowls along dark lanes and lonesome field footpaths where, although his howling makes the hearer's blood run cold, his footfalls make no sound. You may know him at once, should you see him, by his fiery eye. He has but one, and that, like the Cyclopses, is in the middle of his head. But such an encounter might bring you the worst of luck. It is even said that to meet him is to be warned that your death will occur before the end of the year. So you will do well to shut your eyes if you hear him howling. Shut them even if you are uncertain whether it is the dog fiend or the voice of the wind you hear. Should you never set eyes on our Norfolk Snarly Yow, you may perhaps doubt his existence and, like other learned folks, tell us that his story is nothing but the old Scandinavian myth of the Black Hound of Odin, brought to us by the Vikings, who long ago settled down on the Norfolk coast. There is a mention in this description of Snarly Yow. There is a book that was written in 1837 by Frederick Marryat called Snarly Yow, or the Dog Fiend. I imagine this was the inspiration for the name of the Maryland monster mutt. Black shuck is often thought to be a death omen, though in other descriptions it seems to be nothing more than a type of companion. In general, the black dog is a spectral or demonic entity that originated in English folklore. It is often connected to the devil, like a hellhound, and is sometimes an omen of death. A hellhound is exactly what it sounds like. It's a dog from hell. I don't mean Aunt Martha's Chihuahua that bites your ankles, pees on the carpet, and humps everything in sight. I mean, a hellhound is a servant of actual hell, often associated with graveyards and the underworld. Black shuck is sometimes associated with electrical storms, crossroads, or places of execution or ancient pathways. Unless, of course, it's the good black dog that acts like a guardian that guides travelers at night, guiding them onto the right path or protecting them from danger. Which is a little interesting. Perhaps the Snarly Yow was simply trying to help people protect them from some danger that lied ahead on the road when they would try to block the road. Who knows? So in Frederick and Washington counties in Maryland, you need to be on the lookout for two potentially terrifying canines, the Dwayyo and the Snarly Yow, a Hexenwolf and a Hellhound, neither of which I'd want to try to housebreak. That's going to do it for this episode. As always, you can find Lurk on your favorite podcast listening platform or at lurkpodcast.com. On the website, you'll find episodes as well as links to all of our social media pages. If you like the podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star review if your podcast app allows that. You can also review us on Facebook. Those reviews help us be suggested to others with similar interests. Voting is going on now for Paranormalities Magazine's Top 10 Paranormal Podcasts for June. You can vote for us at paranormalitymag.com/vote25. You're allowed to vote 3 times per email address. Voting starts the 21st of each month and ends on the 20th of the following month. Don't forget we have t-shirts and hoodies at lurkpodcastmerch.com. And as always, keep lurking.